Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Rash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
I have to begin with a huge thank you to Will and Rhonda and to Mary and Paul and Stephanie and Peggy and all the folks who were of such a tremendous help and so gracious to invite me to be part of the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention, which was this last week. It was an amazing day. And it was kind of a scary day. I have done a lot of public stuff. You know, I was a Christian broadcaster for a lot of years and spent a lot of time speaking in front of this and that. But this particular event, Free OK, was the first time ever I had spoken as a non-believer, as an atheist, you know. And so, you know, I'm pretty comfortable in my own shoes. I knew I had good content. I thought, yeah, it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. But I'll tell you, 5 minutes before I was supposed to go up on stage, I thought my heart was going to explode out of my chest. I was just like, don't screw it up. You know, is it going to go over? What's the response going to be? You know, and the people were amazing. And for those who weren't able to attend, the show date here is the 8th of August, 2011. Here in the coming few days, you will start to see videos on YouTube of the various speeches. And there was Dr. Bill Morgan. He was used to be a professor. He was like back in the inaugural years of Oral Roberts University, and he dished a little bit on Oral and Richard Roberts and the culture there and how he found his way out. But he was the real deal, you know. He was a true believer, spoke in tongues and all that stuff, and he finally thought, this is all crap. And so he tells a story, and he was very compelling and funny. Abby Smith is a biologist specializing in viruses and retroviruses, and she talks about the anti-vaxxers, and she has a very interesting 30 minutes where she addresses, you know, how the body works. And of course, she was very good at making it sort of palatable for those of us who don't speak scientific lingo, who don't go that deep, because, you know, those people get in the room and they start using terminology that you and I don't know what to do with, and she was terrific. I got a chance to meet and hear Aaron Ra, fantastic. He spent about 50 minutes on stage sharing some wild stories. I mean, just crazy stuff. And then, of course, Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience capped off the day. And I do have video. It's just single camera video. I didn't have a crew. I didn't have any of that stuff. We just stuck a camera on the speakers, and we just did our best to try to document the speeches. And I think I may try to get audio of that and put it out in podcast form for our iTunes people, so that you can, you're going to miss some as far as anybody who uses slides and PowerPoint type stuff. You'll miss some of that, but I think the majority of the content will translate to iTunes. So I'm going to try to get the audio of that, and we'll post it on the podcast. But I just have to say thank you. It was a tremendous day. So encouraging to meet hundreds of people. I mean, people were just so gracious, and we're hugging and we're talking and we're shaking hands, we're taking pictures, and we're laughing and sharing stories, and it was such a positive day. And it was a real encouragement. I mean, it was a rush. I just came off that day thinking, you know, it's a reminder of how many people out there are no longer bound by superstition. And a lot of those folks came from the same kind of a background that I did. I mean, they grew up religious and came to a point of epiphany where they said, this is not working for me, and here's why. And then they just said goodbye and moved on. And Oklahoma is not an easy place to be a free thinker, an atheist, agnostic, whatever. It's just not. And so to see everybody come together, it was just a great time, and I wanted to say thank you. Anyway, the video and I believe the audio should be coming in the next few days. And for those who are interested, I think it'll be really, really good. You know, I was 9 years old when I said the salvation prayer. I was 9. We were at a revival service. I don't even know who the preacher was. You know, it was one of those. first of all, you have to ask the question, why does any healthy church require revival? Why do we have to be revived again? But it used to be a big deal. I don't know if they do revivals anymore, but it used to be that they would bring in a guest revival preacher. And it would go through the week. I think it would start Sunday and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you'd go every night. And it was hugely emotional, even in the Baptist churches. And I remember they had it was just a very fire and brimstone type experience. Everybody, you're going to hell. I'm sure it was about God's love, but hell's always part of those conversations. And at the end, for some reason, there was some motivating thing finally that set the hook. And I went forward. And I knelt at the altar and I said the salvation prayer. Dear Jesus, please come into my heart and save me from all my sins and all that stuff. And at the end of the prayer, at the end of everybody doing their thing, and of course the music plays and the pastor continues to talk to everybody. Come forward, everybody, come forward. They introduce you. What they do is they have everybody stand up there, and then they come out with these little comment cards that your counselors have filled out, and they'll say, "This is Seth. So good to have Seth with us today. Seth just accepted Jesus Christ into his heart as his Lord and Savior. Can I get an amen?" And everybody's like, "Amen, amen." I mean, it was just a very Baptist kind of a thing. And I remember I left thinking, I'm relieved. I'm saved. I'm saved. I got home, went into my bedroom and said the very same prayer all over again. Just said it again, just in case I left something out. I just want to make sure. You never know. You leave out a certain important phrase when you're saving yourself from hell, and if you screw up, you don't want to go there. So, in every few years, I would, "Dear Lord, please come into my heart, save me from all my sins, please. Be the Lord of my life." You would say that. And I am surprised and amazed at how common this story is, where people every few years just have to remind themselves just to make sure they got it, make sure it didn't slip away. Did the policy expire? I better say the salvation prayer again. And of course, the church says, well, that means you weren't saved to begin with. If you have Jesus, for sure in your heart you never have a doubt. And that's just BS. That's just totally bogus. People, they honestly fear hell. Anyway, we're talking about how people who were converted became deconverted. I've got an email from Carm. She was talking about her experience. She said, on July 5th, I had an experience when I herniated a disc in my back. Now, for your listeners who've never had the experience, it feels like someone shooting electricity in your spine. 30 years ago, I had a 9-pound baby, and no comparison in the amount of pain. I'm so glad I'm a man. Because men are wimps, right? So I'm all strapped in. I'm proud to say that my dilemma didn't change my mind in the least. Nonsense is still nonsense when you're in excruciating pain. The irony is my doctors have been practicing in a Catholic hospital, and no one bothered me at all in the hospital. After 3 days of testing, they sent me to a subacute rehab center on a Friday, and I specifically didn't want to go to a Catholic rehab, Carm says. Well, every other place had no beds. I ended up at Father Baker's Manor. Father Nelson Baker is in the running currently for sainthood. He died 75 years ago. He ran an orphanage for young orphan boys. People pray to him posthumously, and their prayers are supposedly answered and declared miracles. I did not request a visit from their spiritual care department, but a deacon showed up in my room. I'll admit I was on some pretty good pain meds. After some idle chit-chat with this guy, she says, he asked if I had kids, and I said yes. 3 of my 4 sons are married now. My 4th son, who is gay, can now marry in our state of New York. His expression immediately soured, and he wanted to know how I felt about that. Carm says, I said that I was thrilled that all of my sons were now equal under the law to be married to the person they love. Wrong answer. He said we could talk about that another time. Then he asked, what was the religion of my family growing up? And I said I was indoctrinated as a Roman Catholic. Wow, did you actually say the word indoctrinated, Carm? So on his little sheet, he said he would list me as a Catholic. And I said, please don't, I'm an atheist. He made the comment about that there are no atheists in foxholes. And I said, oh, yes, there are. He stood up abruptly and he said he thought that God has just not answered my prayers. As he made his way to the door, I said, that's impossible because I don't pray and God doesn't exist. I wish I'd had a photo of the guy's face. I really do believe that believers are becoming fewer and fewer, and this is their job. These people are selling their intangible product, and people just aren't buying it anymore. Well, actually, some are, Carm. She continues, Catholic churches in our area are closing in droves. He was really angry at me. I can imagine I wasn't the first person who didn't go along with him as a prayer partner in rehab. So having had my foxhole moment, I can say I really am an atheist. Someone else told me a story about that. You know what? It was Lee when she was talking about her babies. They died just almost as soon as they were born, and of course, all the people are coming in to comfort the grieving. And she just said it out loud. I mean, she was a non-believer. We're atheists, and the look on their face, and that's so very common. And it's amazing to see how bold people have become when they just say it out loud. Look, we're grieving. We feel loss and pain. We're going through a struggle, but we don't require your prayers to the sky. It's like watching, yesterday was the big prayer rally in Texas for Governor Rick Perry, and people were talking about, 30,000 people showed up, and they're all praying to the sky. I saw somebody's page list that rally as a hate event, and I must disagree. I don't see it as a hate event at all. It's not hate that's happening here. It's delusion. It is people who, they have a great big heart. They're feelers, and they believe we're one nation under God, and they come together trying to return its nation to its roots. They really do want the best for America. They just do. They didn't show up because they hate the non-believer. They didn't show up because they hate. They showed up because they supposedly love God, and they believe that speaking to the air is going to do something. This is how the believer thinks. Trust me, I've been there. They all come together, and they feel good, right? You all join hands, and you sing songs, and there are tears, and everybody's feeling like they accomplished something. They all come together. They all say their prayer. The governor gets to look really good if he's thinking about a future presidential run, right? And then everybody goes home, and essentially nothing changes. More and more people, fortunately, are coming forward and saying, you guys are wasting your time. That rally yesterday, what a huge waste of time and resources. Huge waste. There's more to life than looking good on stage as you close your eyes and appear sanctimonious and speak to nobody to solve a problem. It's just the way it is. Your stories today about how you got out of religion. I have a full switchboard. My only request is the stories I've gotten are so good, but they're so long that I want to try to get to as many calls as we can. So do me a favor and give me the Reader's Digest version. Details are great, but, give me the shortest version of the story, and that would really, really be good. Let's go to Ryan, who's calling us from Kansas. Ryan, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Doing good. You got a deconversion? What happened to you?
It happened in several intervals, I think. My dad was Lutheran. My mom was Catholic. But I was raised Lutheran, and we didn't really go to church so often, just kind of like Easter, Christmas type of stuff. But at the age of 15, my father passed away, and I ended up going to live with my older brother. You're 15 years old, just lost your father. I kind of went off the deep end, started doing a lot of dope and all that kind of fun stuff, and I decided to clean myself up. And when you get into that whole 12-step program, they tell you to find a higher power. So I started believing in God and such. And
was it the whole thing that you are helpless to heal, to cure yourself kind of a program? Like AA?
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah, AA, NA. So, yeah, I found a higher power, which at first they said I had to choose one. I mean, they told me I could choose a fucking doorknob if I wanted, because that doorknob had the power to open that door. All
right, so did you pick one, and who was it?
Well, I picked my father because he was, in my eyes, because I was just still a young kid. At this point, I was 18. And so I picked my dad. And so I started praying to my father, quite literally. My mother became ill in October of 2009. And as her oldest child, I felt obligated to take care of her while she was on her deathbed. And at the point, I didn't know that it was her deathbed, but, I found myself praying to this God, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever religion, that was my whole problem. Is like, there's so many freaking religions in the world, who's right? She died last August, and none of those prayers were answered, and I decided there is no God. But where it became reaffirmed for me was dealing with her on her deathbed. I hear her talk about seeing my grandmother who had been passed for a while and all this, and the doctor essentially told me that she was delirious and she was hallucinating because of the amount of steroids they were pumping into her to keep her lung functionality while she, this and that. And she was seeing her mother and like all these dead relatives because she was a believer herself. And then in February, a good friend and also a family member of mine, my cousin, who's an atheist and a physics professor, had a really bad accident, brain injury, and he was induced into a coma similar to my mother. And I talked to him months later, and he was like, well, no, I didn't see God or Grandma or all these grandpa. Actually, you and I went on a adventure to kill zombies.
Ryan, you're killing me.
No, I'm dead serious. Like he's a non-believer, so like he was hallucinating, the type of shit that he thought about on a regular basis anyway. I mean, I don't know, is he a big horror fan? I mean,
he just drew that from his from his inventory of mental imagery, huh?
Yeah, I mean, so when you're a believer and you're on your deathbed and you're on all these jacked up drugs and you're experiencing all these things. Of course, like when those hallucinations come up, you're going to start seeing magical people in the sky and people that you love, that you miss, that are obviously in heaven. But he doesn't believe in any of that shit, and he and I went on this magical adventure together.
That's pretty wild stuff. Ryan, I got to move on. I'm glad you found your way out. I personally am going to use the term magical adventure at some point in everyday conversation today. I'm just going to walk up to somebody and say, let's go on a magical adventure together. Thanks for calling, Ryan. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, have a good one.
Before I go to the mailbag here real fast, mailbag. I just dated myself. Let's talk to Miriam, who's calling out of Michigan. Hi. Miriam, thank you so much for calling the podcast. What's up?
Well, I sort of have like this realization story. When I saw Religulous for the first time, I was like, oh, he's just like me, because Bill Maher's parents were Catholic and Jewish, and although we didn't go quite that far, my mom is ex-Catholic, and my dad is a non-practicing Jew. So I had this sort of life where my religious stuff was sort of agnostic, but we did actually celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah. And for the longest time, I had no idea what it meant to actually be religious, so I just told everybody that I was both Christian and Jewish.
You let those two camps duke out over who's right and who's wrong. I'm still stuck on ex-Catholic and non-practicing Jew. That shows real commitment, doesn't it? There's true belief.
Oh, yeah.
Down to the core. I'm a non-practicing whatever.
My dad does not want to stop identifying as a Jew, but he doesn't really believe anymore, so that's why I call him a non-practicing Jew. And my mom used to be Catholic, and then she gave it up. But we still do the holidays because we like presents and we like family time and all that. For a while, I had this phase where I didn't know what to believe, and I heard all these stories about the religious past and everything, and I kind of thought they were true, but they didn't matter. But finally, when I was like 16 or something, I was in a bookstore and I saw this book called The Portable Atheist by Chris Hitchens. And something snapped. And I was like, yeah, that is what I believe. I'm an atheist.
How do your parents feel about that?
They're fine with it because they don't really practice anything themselves. I consider myself really, really lucky that I have parents like that. But
I like the idea of teenagers reading Christopher Hitchens. By the way, if you ever call him Chris, you'll see his face turn to stone.
Okay. I will take that as a good
well, Miriam, I'm glad to meet a fellow free thinker out there, and I'm glad your family's all tight and everybody's good, and it's great to hear your story. Thanks for being a part of the show today.
I've heard all these stories about people whose parents kind of disowned them if they became atheists, and that's never happened to me.
I'm glad to hear that story. Miriam, take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.
I had an email from Megan. She said, my conversion took a very short time. All that was needed was a fearful indoctrination at camp. Oh, no, like Jesus camp? And I was literally frightened into believing. We talk a little bit about this, by the way. I'll digress for a second, Megan. We talk about this when I post the YouTube presentation of the speech I gave at Free OK. We talk about how the church uses fear to go after kids, and I encourage you, when it goes up, to take a look, or you may be able to relate. Megan continues, my deconversion took years. My conversion took a short time. My deconversion took years. Questions began to build up as my sense of reasoning matured. Answers like, we are not meant to understand. We just believe. Or, God works in mysterious ways. We're losing clout with me. Megan continues, around the 9th grade, I really started struggling. My faith alone was not enough, and the answers I was getting were condescending at best. I finally got it when I was about 17. I'd quit going to church by then. I was the last one in the family to do so. Because of this, I no longer felt it was my duty to take without complaint the abuse literally and liberally handed out by my mother. One evening, I stood up to her abusive treatment, and she said, God damn it, you need to go back to church. I can hardly stand to be around you. And that was an aha moment. This confirmed what I had come to believe. Religion was about control and fear. Megan continues, my deconversion took years, not because I still believed, rather because I needed to find resources to back up my beliefs that man created God. There was no internet then, so this took time. It was during this time I realized the following statement was true. The Christian religion in a nutshell. Quote, do it my way or I will ensure you are in pain for eternity because I love you. Unquote. If this God were real, he was a bully, and I refuse to bow to a bully. Moreover, if he were real, why would he need to be a bully? Today I neither believe nor do I let fear lead me. Instead, reason dictates how I process information. Because of this, I appreciate life so much more. My universe has become immensely larger, and mysteries are no longer attacked based on fear and chosen ignorance. Rather, they are embraced with curiosity. Thanks, Megan, for the email, which brings up a great point. I have noticed since I deconverted myself how seldom the people I tell about my apostasy are curious about it. When you believe you have all of the answers, when you're not used to having the mindset to ask questions. Here's a great example. If I was to see someone that I knew 20 years ago or I went to Christian school with or was a former Christian radio listener, right? And I say, well, I'm an atheist. I do not believe in any gods anywhere. I'd say freaking 7-8 times out of 10. What I get back is, how did that happen? Really? What information did you get? I mean, how you were a true believer. Take me down the path. Let's have coffee. Tell me the story. No, hardly anybody says that. What they say is, oh, man, somebody sold you a bill of goods. You've been deceived. I mean, nobody asks the question how I got there. There's no curiosity, right? When you are imprinted with, well, we already have the answer, and the answer is God, and God is love, and kumbaya, you stop being curious. And one thing I love about being a free thinker is that the free thinking community fosters and encourages questions. Question. Ask questions. Be skeptical. If you're not satisfied with this answer, go find another answer that's well documented, that makes sense. Put a bunch of freaking scientists in the room and let them argue with each other, and they'll find the best answer, and they'll continue to do peer-reviewed studies and new experiments and try and improve the answer. They love curiosity. But when you are a believer and you already have the answer before the question is asked, that curiosity is muted. They say it's not. What they say is, test God, question God. He'll prove himself to you. But what they want is for you to question God in a safe unobtrusive, non-threatening way. And if you don't get the answer that they want, they say you have been deceived, you answered, or you asked the wrong question, or it is, or you're simply not open to God. It's a parlor trick. Let's talk to Steve in Tennessee. I'm so glad you waited, Steve. Thanks for your patience. What's up?
Hey, man, appreciate you.
Thanks for calling.
My story is not maybe as traumatic as some of your previous callers because I'm farther away from it. I'm nearly 40 now. But I remember when it started. I grew up in a small town and went to church in an even smaller town. We're talking about a town that had one store, 200 or 300 people, and 15 churches. And, that's typical. That is typical where I live. You cannot drive a half mile.
Welcome to Tennessee. Was it in Tennessee?
Tennessee, baby.
All right.
Tennessee. But anyway, this was back in the 80s. I was probably 10 years old. I grew up hellfire and brimstone, backwoods. Neither my house nor my church had indoor plumbing. I mean, that's just how backwoods we were. And we did everything but handle the snakes. We were scared of snakes, so we didn't handle the snakes. But everything else we did, praying demons out the whole 9 yards. Anyway, to get to it, my mother was on her whole third marriage, and I had a stepdad, had a little bit of a speech impediment. He would stammer a little bit. He started ever since with by George. And anybody listening to this around here is going to know exactly who I am now. And who he is and who my family is, and I'll be getting some phone calls. But anyway, he had an older son, and he and his older son and one of his friends were out riding around a four-wheel drive pickup. And being good rednecks, they were properly intoxicated, and they rolled the truck. Rolled it completely over, did a complete barrel roll, landed on off the roll bars, landed on its wheels. Well, of course, they come back to the town there, and they come to the store, and this being a town of 200 or 300 people, something's happened. So everybody's, coming up looking at the truck, checking out the damage. Well, you guys are all right. Yeah, like I said, they're obviously drunk. I'm 10 years old, I can tell it. The preacher shows up, our preacher. He assesses the truck. He assesses the guys in it, and his preacher's a recovering alcoholic. I don't know how they were drunk, but he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. This guy died a few years ago, and I actually cried at his funeral because I did love the guy. But he assesses the truck. He assesses the guys, and he spreads his arms, and he declares it. It was a miracle. This was a miracle. We're in the presence of a miracle. God reached down from heaven and saved these boys. My stepdad turns to me quietly and says, by George and goddamn roll bars, what saved them? And it's like somebody threw a switch, man. All of a sudden, I'm 10 years old, and all of a sudden, bang. And you got to understand, I was raised Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Jesus is coming to kill me. I was sent to bed praying every night because the nukes were going to fly. Tonight had to be it. Reagan was definitely the Antichrist. This is what I was raised in from birth. And just instantly, bang, my entire paradigm shifted. Absolutely shifted. Now, I will say this. I did immediately go in somebody's house there, found a back room, closed the door, flung myself on the floor, and prayed and pleaded with God to get that thought out of my head. Because, that's a devil thought. I mean, what's the devil do in the Bible? He asks questions.
Yeah, it's an attack,
How brilliant is that, by the way? How brilliant is that to weave that into the narrative that the devil's number one crime is asking questions? But anyway, I couldn't get rid of that thought. Went back and forth on do I believe, do I not believe, until I was about 14, and then I settled on. I'll finish up here. I mean, I did what everybody does. I did the math on Noah's Ark, 450 feet, two of every animal, couldn't make it work. Looked at the probability that the entire species kicked off with two people, a few thousand. Just the stuff that people do. Read the Gospels, thought, well, maybe there's truth in Jesus, but it turned out he told his followers that he was going to bring the kingdom in their lifetime. And I'm pretty sure they're all dead.
The Bible says, Christ said there were some who will not see death, right? And that was 2,000 years ago.
Mark 9:1. It's in three of the Gospels that I can flip it open and show it to people, and of course they compartmentalize. Well, he was seeing into the future, all that, and I don't attack people. I'm not angry, and I understand where I live. I mean, not going to church has cost me a job before. When people find out that I'm not a church goer.
No, I understand. Trust me.
I mean, it's cost me a $17 an hour job in this economy. So I have to navigate. But anyway, back to my deconversion. By the age of 14, I kind of made up my mind I just wasn't a Christian. No problem, no quarrel with God. I still to this day, nearly 40, I still to this day hope there is a God. Just my own personal hope, even though I know it's probably irrational. But I hope there's a God, and I hope he takes questions. You know? That'd be That's what I tell people. Ask me, what are your religious beliefs? I say, I hope there's a God, and I hope he takes questions at the end. Man, I mean, that's all I ask. I'm not mad at anybody. But anyway, 14, I tell my mom, I don't want to go to church anymore. I just don't believe in this stuff. Oh. And I don't want to speak ill of my mother. She died last month, and I still miss her. But, I mean, she died mailing money to televangelists, you know. I mean, I'm sure you heard it all before. But anyway, fight after fight after fight. Sunday morning, I dreaded Sunday mornings. Two things. I was probably going to lose and get dragged to church. By this point, I had a 300-pound stepfather. I couldn't, you know, and I didn't mess with him. I messed with him one time, and he was a great guy too. But I mean, you know, I tested him one time, and he passed the test. And so I did what I was told for the most part. But you know, I had to go to church, which meant missing WWF superstars on Sunday morning.
Steve, you're just...
Let me tell you something. I was having this discussion with a good friend of mine the other day. We grew up, we were comic book geeks and wrestling fans. And this was back in the 80s. Wrestling is different now. But we were talking about how we learned more and better morality from comic books and professional wrestling than we ever did in Sunday school. We learned bad guys are the ones who cheat. And they usually get theirs in the end. They usually don't prosper long term. We learn with great power comes great responsibility. We learn about truth, justice, and the American way. We didn't learn those things in church. We learned them in comic books and wrestling. But anyway, when I got into my 20s, I finally decided, you know what? If I'm going to walk around saying I don't believe in this stuff, let's look at what I don't believe in. And I spent years studying the Bible. I do think I had some residual hope that while I might be able to say, yeah, okay, you know, these stories aren't literally true, but maybe there's some greater good here, some greater truth to be gleaned from this, and I'm just missing it. So I started studying the Bible, and I mean, I hardcore studied the Bible. And again, this is before internet was popular. I didn't have internet. So, I mean, I'm on my own here, but when I get to stuff like in Deuteronomy where if a man rapes a young virgin, she has to marry him, I just can't get on my knees to that, and so I can honestly, and I dabbled with. I thought about becoming a Buddhist a few years ago because you're not asked to believe in a whole hell of a lot, you know.
A Buddhist in Tennessee, huh?
Don't swat a fly. You know? Yeah, gotta go over. That'd get me lynched. I tell you, I think it would be easier if I came out as a homosexual. I really do. I think it would be.
No, I get that.
You know, and even in my own redneck backwoods family, you know, we now have mixed race children in our family. I never thought I would see that. So maybe someday this area will be a little more open-minded. But, yeah, if you don't believe in the talking snake around here, you're the one with the mental disorder. And like I said, I got to navigate this, man. I'm a big tough guy and everything, and people don't mess with me physically anymore, but they want to.
Well, Steve, you know, honestly, it starts with people like you. I mean, it starts with calls like this. It starts with people like you, and you're a fantastically entertaining caller. I just love having you on the air. I love your sense of humor.
I tell you, I wish I had your skills. I would host a show on something, but
whatever.
I don't know. You go to my YouTube and look at my videos. They're not all that.
I got people in my chat room right now who are begging you to come back and do the show again with me because you are.
Hey, man, and now my nervousness has gone away, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I'll just be a regular caller if you want me to. I've got stories. I could honestly dominate your entire show, and I won't do that because I want to hear.
You've already done it, Steve. You took over, man.
But I do want to hear other people's stories, and and I know this is going to be archived on YouTube, all that, and that's how I found you was on YouTube and started listening to your older podcasts. And if you are, I don't want to get anybody ostracized by their family or anything like that, but it is important for me to tell anybody out there who is in my situation, and whether you're younger or older, whatever you are, and you're surrounded by people who will just get in your face and tell you you're going to hell, or will deny you employment or whatever. You are not alone, and I believe. And if nothing catastrophic happens in this country in the next, like another 9/11, if we can avoid another 9/11 for maybe 20 years, this country will shift. I just feel it. I see it. More and more people, even my religious friends, have now started coming to me asking me. First they'll try to convert me, and like especially if they're going through a crisis of faith on their own. Then they come after me because I think their belief is if they could convert me, then that would be a miracle and it would prove everything they believed. And I'm never mean to anybody. I don't ridicule them for being religious. I can see the appeal of it, to be honest with you. But when we have nice civil discussions, I start telling them why I don't believe this and start opening the Bible and showing them this is the part I have a problem with, this is the part I have a problem with. It's amazing how some of them are very civil about it, and they'll step back and they start examining their own belief system. And when they find out they don't get struck dead for that, then they start. Maybe they may never give up their beliefs, but they may become accepting of people who don't share them.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think if you treat them like a human being instead of insulting them right off the bat,
right. You had a caller. I wanted to kick this guy's ass. The one that was doing the I won't even say it with the Jesus, the sexual act. In front of church. Remember if this?
Yeah, look, let me tell you right now, people, that type of behavior does not represent the vast majority of the people I've met.
Than a gang of thugs from the local church coming beating me up.
I got people on my Facebook. You'll see them on the comment section. There are some people out there, honestly, who are just. I mean, I honestly want to be the kind of guy when I'm in a room with a believer, non-believer. I want to be the kind of guy that people want to be around. I just do. And we can agree, we can disagree, we can be an adult.
I tell you, coming out of that has made me value human life so much more.
Yeah.
And the love I have for people, and having a recent death in the family, man, I'm just wanting to reach out and hug everybody. And,
Steve,
I try to set the example.
I gotta take a breath.
I understand, man. I understand.
Right,
I will call back. I'll call back. We'll do this again.
Follow my voice. Before I let you go, my whole chat room is freaking out, asking me what your YouTube page is. Do you want to slug it real quick so they can go and hear more nuggets of wisdom?
There's nothing special on it. I'm kind of a skeptic, and I pick on the JFK conspiracy nuts. It's Steve D, one word, 8878. And there's really not a whole lot on it. I've got like 5 videos up. I don't have like me ranting and raving. There's like a video of my kids. There's some flood footage, and then there's some video from Dealey Plaza in Dallas a couple of years ago when I was just I just rolled camera on some conspiracy nuts around the JFK conspiracy.
Just hang on. Steve D as in dog, right? Steve D 887?
8878.
On YouTube.
8878.
Steve D 8878 on YouTube. All right, we'll get ready for an influx of traffic.
Find me on Facebook. Find me on YouTube, and we'll chat. And if you're friendly, I'll send you a link to my Facebook account.
Thanks for the call, Steve. Take care of yourself, man.
Thank you, brother.
All right, take care of yourself. That guy talks like I'm from Oklahoma. We all talk like that around here. You know what I'm saying? You know, and the only way to get rid of the accent is to open your eyes real wide. Oh yeah, it seems to solve it. I can picture those drunk guys rolling the truck, and they're like, you know what? Jesus reinforced that roll bar. You know, when they went down the hill, that roll bar was only rated for X amount of pounds, and it probably should have busted. But Jesus reached down there and he reinforced that mother so that it stayed erect, and they was saved, and it was a miracle. Steve, you are priceless. Josiah, he said, I'm 18 years old. Been an atheist for about a year and a half now. My deconversion, looking back, must have started when I was a little boy and progressed very slowly until last year, February. I can still remember those horrible nightmares of my beloved brother and sister going to hell and myself not joining them. Still, I would have said I believed if anyone would have asked me, and I think I really did, but nightmares only shake a child's world. They never stabilize it. That's my earliest memory of doubt, or at least discomfort and pain with my faith. After that, my faith was especially tried while on camping trips. I was still a young boy, and I would hike up a tall hill early in the magical morning and pray out loud, feeling certain that in this beautiful moment he would answer, but he never did. I was always left in tears. Josiah continues, my faith was dormant for a while after those trips because the next trial was when I was in 8th grade. I went to a summer camp hosted by my church, which was geared towards strengthening our bond with Christ. Is summer camp like a recurring theme? It's amazing the influence it has. I really felt him there that week, as anyone would, with the lights, the songs, and the tearful prayers. But that was the first time I was conscious of something wrong with the whole thing. For when I went home, I felt nothing. I knew that everyone else felt it fade away, too. We were all too ashamed to say anything. After that, it was hatred that shook me free of my bonds, hatred for my fellow Christians. I attended a new church the following year, a Baptist church near my new home. Everyone was so happy, nothing but cheerful smiles and laughter. I knew it was fake, and it made me sick. I never smiled during my years there. I was unhappy as can be. I now know that it was the slow betrayal of my church that ate at my being. Every Sunday I attended the youth services, and every Sunday I became more furious at those fakes. Why was I so angry and they so jubilant? From my interactions with the other students, I knew they were all hypocrites. Why was I miserable when I followed Jesus more closely than any of those drug-addled smile-mongers could ever hope to imagine? As the years passed, I just became distant from everyone. Then I made an odd decision. I don't know why any Christian would ever do what I did, but I'm so very glad I did it. I took a week off from God. I told Jesus to get out of my heart. And you know what? Life carried on so normally that a month passed before I remembered to repent. That was pretty much the last straw. I opened my eyes to a new world. Now, mind you, I still had a while before I was happy and a comfortable atheist, but it was worth it. A year and a half later, I'm the happiest I've ever been. You know, there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy that does take place in the church. I don't think it's healthy to hate Christians. And I don't think a lot of them see themselves as fakes. Many of them are truly happy. They really are. It's delusional happiness, but they're happy. They're not faking it. It's not a game to them. They really, truly, honestly believe, and they're happy. Is it warranted? Does it have merit? No. Is it based in fact and reality and science? No. But are they happy? Yeah. And I don't think hatred of Christians or anyone really, there are a few people out there. It'd be pretty easy, but I honestly don't know that that's healthy. So I hope as you move forward, Josiah, that when you look at people within the church, you don't look at them with hatred. I just don't see that as a healthy way to move. Let's talk about the dogma. Let's hate the fact that, there's so much superstition out there. But the vast majority of the people, honestly, in mainstream Christianity are good people. They are. They are. They can be loyal friends. They love their children. They love their spouses. They're productive people. They have jobs. They want to make the world a better place. They are living, a little bit in fantasy land, but they are not. They're not worthy of hatred. I don't believe that at all. Okay, let's talk to Lindsay, who's calling from California. Lindsay, thanks for waiting. What's up?
Hi, Seth. A few years ago, I started going on online forums. And I was just chatting, usually just to make friends in different countries and in different parts of the world. And I thought it was really fun because I could connect with people in the coolest of ways that I was never going to meet, but I could still talk to. And I remember one day in one particular forum, there was a forum called Atheists and Skeptics. And at the time, I was a devout Roman Catholic. And it was about March last year. When this happened, I went in there thinking that I was going to say a few words of powerful Christ-like stuff, and they were going to see the light, and everybody was going to know Jesus the way I did. And, I'd never really met an atheist in my town. I knew what it was, but I'd never seen somebody who genuinely didn't believe in God other than my dad. So I started talking to a couple of atheists on the Atheists and Skeptics forum, and it was like I went in there and I was a naive kind of, where I was like, you guys have no idea the love I experience in Christ and all that jazz. And then they started having a discussion with me, a very honest, a very reasonable discussion. And then I started quoting Bible verses, and they started refuting those Bible verses. And, you know, I was just so shocked at how very, very easily all of my arguments were crumbling. I just present them thinking that it's the best argument in the world, and then it's shattered with like a paragraph.
Now, what's going on in your mind right now? I mean, when that started to happen, was it fear? Or were you thinking, I'm betraying my upbringing, I'm betraying my God, I'm betraying my belief, these doubts, or it's the enemy? I mean, what's going on in your head?
I don't know. Looking back, I don't really know what I was thinking at the time. I know that after a while I went into this, I became sort of an agnostic, kind of more of a believer, where I was trying to believe, and every time I put these arguments one after another, it was shattering, that my whole world was crumbling around me, this secure, programmed, well-structured world where I lived in this American dream household, middle class, a loving mom, a loving stepdad. It was a really nice life. I was a devout Christian. And then all of a sudden, these atheists that I was never going to meet, I never knew before, were shattering that so very easily. And I went into this state of like spiritual withdrawal, where I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to believe. And it was really, really scary. But
now, what? You sound pretty comfortable in your own skin. I mean, you sound like you're doing good, right?
Yeah, I am. It was a really, really strange thing. Can you hold on 1 second? My mom just walked into the room.
Do you want to go on hold and I can come back to you?
Sorry about that. And it was really interesting to.
You can't really talk, can you?
Yeah. Okay. Now I can. Sorry.
Welcome to the Atheist Radio Show, where when someone walks in the room, you have to guard what you say, or else you know you're in for a long, long time at the dinner table. All right, so put a cap on it for me, Lindsay. You're in a good place, and what, do you call yourself an atheist out and out? Are you just bold and do you just say it? Does your family know? What?
Definitely call myself an atheist. My mom knows. My whole family knows. I don't know when the exact breaking point was where I made the transition from agnostic to atheist, but I know there was just some point in the last year or so when I said, I'm done with this. I'm no longer part of this. Goodbye. And my mom is really disappointed in me, I think, and it's not something we really talk about. It's not something we really say that often, but
it hurts. It hurts. I mean, she feels like she failed. She failed you as a parent. I mean, I've been through the same thing.
She does feel like that.
If only I had been a better parent, if only I had shown you Jesus' love, if only I'd had you in church more, if only, which is a tremendously selfish way to look at it. What it does is it robs you of the ability to make decisions on your own. What she's saying is if only I had done a better job, you would be something different. But you're an adult. You can choose your path. You know, you can add up 2 + 2 = 4 and choose your worldview. She shouldn't try to co-opt your worldview or your life's decisions onto her abilities as a parent. She loves you, right? You know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually only 14, so I'm still living in the house. But
oh, honey, you're 14 years old and an atheist in a religious home?
Yes. It's a difficult thing. I watch Bionic Dance and Zinnia Jones videos. I watch The Amazing Atheist. I've seen almost all of your videos. My whole atheist life is online now, thanks to that forum, and that forum at Atheists and Skeptics. I'm still a part of that forum. I still talk to those people all the time. They're great people. I have a YouTube account where I express my views and I talk openly about all of these things. Living in the town I live in, I feel like my whole beliefs are centered around the internet, and I can't do anything outside of that. I can't tell anybody.
Let me just put it. I always hesitate a little bit, Lindsay, when I talk to people who are minors. who are not old enough to vote or drive or drink or what. Because quite frankly, it's a weird gray area where I want to make sure I'm not trotting on the guardianship that has been placed over you. At the same time, I listen to your story and I hear how well-spoken you are and how thoughtful you are and how you're not afraid to ask questions. And I'm proud to hear your voice. I'm proud to know that there's a young teenager out there who's learning to think critically. And for what it's worth, I'll tell you that Steve in Tennessee be damn proud of you.
Steve was awesome. I really, really like that guy.
Lindsay, I wish you
have him back on.
The best with your family. And if you are in a situation where there's not a lot that you can do in your social circle, if it becomes difficult for you to speak out loud in your home, I would encourage you, my encouragement to all young teenagers is to use this time to just get educated. You know, you don't have to be a bullhorn. You don't have to go out and fight at the dinner table every night, but just be a sponge and learn as much as you can about the Christian culture, your parents' belief systems, other belief systems, what the atheist does and does not believe. You can use this time as a teenager so that when the time comes and you are able to go out and, cast a vote on a ballot, or, you're making life decisions on your own, building a family of your own, this will have been a good formative time for you. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it does. Thanks for the advice, Seth, and thanks for having me on your show.
You're terrific, Lindsay. Take care of yourself in California.
All right, bye.
Bye. 14. And I was there. I was a spokesperson for Youth for Christ when I was about 14 or 15. I think about that. I was the epitome of the nice young man. I was a good speaker. I was always a good communicator. And what happened was that I found myself early on in student leader positions. And one of those things was we had a guy come in, and he was a representative for the local Youth for Christ branch, right? And it's going after young people. And they had these nightly meetings, and you'd go grab people, and you'd have pizza, and it was fun, and it was very evangelical. And because I was a communicator, right, good, clean-cut kid, I ended up sort of being on stage. And I would go out and speak to different groups, and we had events and shows. And it was just... But I think about, how much did I really know about the world? I was 14 or 15. What am I doing on stage? Often talking to adults about the world, about truth. I wasn't old enough to freaking drive. I'd be picked up and taken to the events. I'm not discounting everything that a teenager says or does. They have a lot of value, a lot to offer, but there's so much yet to learn at that age. And yet the church loves it when young people are champions for Christ. You ever see that video of the little boy? Like a little boy preacher. He couldn't have been more than freaking 7, 8 years old, right? And he's on stage, and I don't know if he's speaking in tongues. He's got the microphone, he's mashing it up against his face, and everybody's in the audience going, praise Jesus, and the organ plays. That kid's a parrot. He's just parroting what he's seen and heard and been indoctrinated with. What does he know about the world? And nothing. But religion takes icons like this, and they put them on stage, and they use them as props. They use them. I kind of felt like I was used. Somebody should have sat me down and said, you are a minnow. You've never cast a vote in your life. You've never held a job in your life. You've never traveled anywhere of significance in your life. You've never studied other cultures with any meaning in your life. You got a lot to learn before you teach these people something. That's what they should have said. But I fit the mold. So I got propped up on stage and told people about how much I love Jesus and how much they should too. I have young people, sometimes young teenagers will send me messages begging me to come back to Christ. If only you knew the truth, they would, and they are programmed, right? They're going out being evangelical, and they teach children very young to do this, and they're sending me these, and I have to be very careful, because my first thought is to say, you are a child. You are a blank slate in this world. You're telling me what you were programmed by your family and church and culture to tell me, but you haven't really lived. Not long enough to see the big picture. I mean, then it kind of breaks my heart. My encouragement then is always just be a sponge. Develop critical thinking skills. Listen to all the other arguments. Use your formative years, your childhood, your teenage years, your young adult years as much, and then continue it on into life. But just be a sponge. Get the information. And then, with good information comes good decisions. I'm going to finish with an email I got from Michelle. It's a little bit long, but she has had a wild ride, and I thought it would be a good cap to the show. Michelle says, around 1988, I began learning Arabic with an interest in the Quran. As soon as I learned it, I began frequenting a Sufi mosque. I hope I said that right, S-U-F-I. Michelle, forgive me if I got it wrong. It was a mosque. It was not long before I converted, keeping my religion and affairs with it quite secret. Sufi dogma is very mystical and self-dependent, yet leans heavily on the mystery of surah excerpts from the Holy Quran. I began with a shahada. I believe in Allah and His one true prophet, Muhammad, in the beginning of 1990. I hid my religion from family and friends, save for two. Michelle continues, I became the second wife to a man from Morocco who was very sweet and very good, affording me luxuries that were not common in Muslim marriages. I stayed for 2 years, having gotten an annulment at the end of 1992, right before the death of the man who raised me. I said my prayers 5 times a day, did my meditations, and continued to frequent the mosque. I then became very interested in Kabbalistic ritual magic in the end of 1993 and trained under a very known figure in that community. I began depending on God/Allah for all the things in my life, my health, my well-being, my emotional needs and desires. I kept the Muslim quiet and appeared to my friends to be a practicing ceremonial Wiccan. I abandoned the witchcraft in the summer of 2000 and began practicing it only when I wanted something, but kept the Muslim secret. I was still praying 5 times a day without going through the motions, but saying the prayers silently in my head. Michelle continues. In 2000, I came out as a lesbian. What a ride this lady's had, huh? I came out as a lesbian, which estranged me from the mosque, and I moved in with a woman that was not a good match for me. I stopped practicing magic altogether in 2001, preferring to keep that I was a Muslim secret. I came out as a Sufi Muslim in 2001 and continued practicing until 2009. That's not too far off, Michelle. She says, one day, I got up at 5:45 a.m. to say my morning prayers and prepare for work at 8:30. I was bowing facing Mecca, and suddenly I felt incredibly stupid. Allah had not answered any of my prayers. The proofs I held that He existed as my spiritual guide suddenly became ridiculous. For the first time in my life, I realized that Allah, Zeus, Jesus, angels, demons, and rituals did not ever work. I was saying the same thing 5 times a day, following modesty rules and living by obligations that didn't really do anything for me. I realized what I was doing was being submissive to something that wasn't there. It became clear that the prayer I was praying was meaningless, and the things I was doing while praying amounted to exercises for something that was never there. I woke up that morning. I got up from my floor and stopped doing it. Michelle says, I was glad to be able to sleep in. I feel that way about Sunday morning, Michelle. I tell you, there's nothing like taking your time getting out of the sack and not having to get dressed up. She says, getting up at 7 a.m. instead of that horrid early hour, I suddenly felt very free, like a weight was lifted from me. I found all the silly things I read and all those silly texts claiming to be holy were nothing more than a person exerting fear, tenets, and societal consequences to control me 5 times a day. It was ridiculous. By the end of 2009, I came out as an atheist and never looked back, except to debunk claims that religions made to people that were either outright lies, inconsistent, contradictory, and wild fairy tales told to children and adults in order to gain money, time, and energy from me that was not returned. Allah was a lie, All of it became a profound and profane lie. I felt free since then, Michelle says. Living my life and depending upon good common sense and logic to make sense of things that seemed mysterious, paranormal, or mystical. There's no such thing as magic. There's no such thing as a soul. Any God is improbable. And science became my number one reading subject. I use my, quote, holy text to bust holes in the theory that a caring, all-merciful, all-gracious, all-knowing God exists, showing all of it to be a bullshit story used to manipulate the masses into thinking it's their way or the highway. Michelle says, I regularly listen to your podcast as well as follow several other impressive atheist minds on YouTube. Thank you. I actually am free and wish that all those years that I believed in fairy tales was used more productively, but I have my freedom from religion now, and I'm ready to live it for the rest of my life. I'm glad you made it out, Michelle. And I'm glad that you can provide inspiration to so many others, probably within the sound of my voice, who might be in religion, who might be struggling with fear, with indoctrination, and they're thinking, I don't think I can do this. And they can hear your story, and they can be encouraged that they are not alone. We'll do this again here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, keep an eye out on YouTube and on our Facebook pages for the free OK events, the speeches, some great stuff that deals with much of what we talked about today. Thank you so much for being a part of the community and the show, and have a wonderful week. See you next time.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. TheThinkingAtheist.com.